am. It's what is it? About 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm heading back from Boston. I just dropped my son and his girlfriend off. They were up for a few days from New York. They're heading back to the city, down to Brooklyn, and we had a great. We had dinner with her family. We went out to dinner last night for sushi. It was fun. But anyway, that's not what this video is about. This video is about an auction that's coming up down on Cape Cod at Eldreds in a couple of weeks, and it is the collection of a very interesting person. If you're interested in American decorative art, early American decorative art, and very fine country examples, primitives, early American furniture, rare American furniture, but most importantly in original untouched condition. They're doing a sale down there of the collection of Martha Hamilton, and she was a well-known expert in American antiques. She was on the board of many museums. She worked at Skinner's in Boston. Kind of surprises me Skinner's didn't do this sale. I don't know what the deal was there, but she was very well known for many, many years. I talked about it on the Patreon video earlier this week, that we got to know her a bit. She used to come around to the auctions, and but she was a scholar. At any rate, she has this fantastic collection of everything from American folk art, silhouettes, early American furniture, 1720s, 1730s Queen Anne furniture. But what's fascinating about it is it's all in absolutely untouched original condition for the most part. That was her thing. No refinished stuff, nothing heavily restored, that sort of thing. Great mirrors, early American silhouettes, oil paintings, all kinds of very good things. And she researched all of them, and she bought everything from the best dealers. If she was buying from a dealer, there are certain dealers in the trade who were highly reputable. Bill Samaha, one of the most famous, who was a very great guy. He's still around. He's retired now. He's getting up there, but he was one of the legendary Americana collectors and Americana dealers, and he had phenomenal knowledge of it. He was a lot of fun, and anyway, she built this collection over many, many years. She just passed away last year. She was in her 90s, and she was a nice person. She was a genuinely nice person, and I want you to check the sale out. But if you like things with great American furniture and decor with great provenance and great quality, and has a real aesthetic to it, this is an auction you want to pay close attention to, and it's going to be very interesting to see how it does. Those people that knew her are going to scramble to buy this stuff because she is now part of the provenance. There aren't many collectors of her caliber around anymore that actually impact the desirability of some of these pieces, and I'll be really, really fascinated. So we're going to take a look at some of the items. I'm going to go through them, and if you want to pursue the sale, I'll tell you how to get there, and how to find them on Live Auctioneers for Invaluable, and we'll go from there. Okay. And this is the auction. This is the sale, the Martha Hamilton's collection. And as you know, as I said at the beginning, I don't do a lot with Americana too much. We focus mostly on Asian works of art. But I'd like to talk a little bit more about other things. And if you're going to talk about American antiques and rare American antiques and antiques that were collected with an enormous amount of care and pride over many, many, many decades by a very knowledgeable person, a person with a research background, a person with her hand on the pulse of the market and understanding it, and doing all of the legwork, Martha Hamilton was the collector. And in this sale are some really interesting things. Most of these pieces date from the early 18th century through the first quarter or so of the 19th century. A few pieces later, there's a couple of oil paintings in here which are superb, one by Gifford and so forth. But it's all about New England. Most of the pieces in here are from New England, from Boston, southern New Hampshire, northern Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island, and so forth. She apparently lived. I didn't know she was living on Cape Cod, but I guess she was at the end of her time. And Eldreds got the sale. which is pretty great. They're a good auction house. They do a good job, and these are the kinds of things that she was a fan of. And to understand these pieces, you need to think a lot about the context of the period in which they were produced, what the culture was like in early America, the settlers, pre everything, pre-America. The United States wasn't formed yet. Many of the things in here were done when it was still a colony, and it's the vision and the sights and the sounds and the everything that went into that way of life that were then transmitted to art, things that they saw. You're going to see some children's art. You're going to see American folk art, all kinds of things. But this was how they looked at the world, because that's where they were. And but it's very important to understand that all of these pieces formed a lot of the foundational stuff that we see today in American decorative art. They're reflective of the English tastes, European tastes. There's some Dutch brass in here. There's all kinds of things in this sale. But these are basically relics. But they're important to understand because they represent who we are today to a large degree. The things that we see and think and how our societies have evolved came from these objects. And it's an interesting lot of things. And you'll see what people could do when they couldn't go to a store and buy things. You had to make them yourself. If you wanted a mirror, you made it yourself, or you had a friend make it. You found a piece of glass you could turn into a mirror. You decorated furniture with paint because you couldn't afford to buy art. There wasn't much art to buy. So you made your own art and you painted what was around you. And it was a very, very interesting load of things. And it's important that you have these things in your life as a reminder of who you are, of your culture, where you came from, how America came to be, and so forth. And these were the day-to-day objects that people made, used, repaired, replaced, sold, did all kinds of things with. And we're going to start with this. This is one of the most interesting things of the sale, in my opinion. It's a very, very rare federal period inlaid mahogany two-tiered bureau. And what's so unusual about it is that it has this very nice lower section, which is of a type of bureau that you do see in federal furniture made between 1800 and 1825. But it has an upper tier. It's a double-tiered bureau. They call it a two-tier bureau. And in the research down below, she apparently looked into it a great deal and realized this might be a unique piece. I can't remember having ever seen one of these. But it's beautifully done. It's got fantastic inlay, overlay veneers on it, crystal or glass knobs, not crystal, but pressed molded glass knobs. They may be original because most of what Martha bought she only really wanted pieces that were original. She didn't mind if it had a legitimate old repair, but she didn't buy slicked up, refinished, resanded furniture, which to me is worth nothing because when you strip off the surface of an old piece of American furniture or any furniture, you're removing the history of the piece and you're making it, you're erasing its soul, sort of. You're sort of getting rid of everything that made it what it should be at this point after a couple of hundred years. And this is an absolutely fantastic piece of furniture. I can't say enough about it. I love the design. I like the turnings. And where was it made? Probably in Massachusetts, possibly maybe Connecticut. Very hard to pin down. They're saying Eastern New Hampshire, and maybe she researched it and based it on the style of the base, which is the kind of chest you see on the coastal New Hampshire. But you also see sometimes pieces like this in Connecticut. So, and she lived down that way. So I'm gonna have to go with defer to if this was her description that it was Eastern New Hampshire, then we'll go with that. But boy, what a wonderful piece of New England furniture. Really, really great. And the estimate on it is quite reasonable: $5,000 to $10,000, $2,500 opening bid. It's already got 29 people watching it, so I think there's going to be a lot of interest in this. But this is a unique. It almost looks like folk art, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's a very interesting piece. And then the Queen Anne maple. She used a couple of very nice early Queen Anne maple drop leaf tables. This is a dining table, and it has a wonderful finish on it. Nice old. It's probably not an original finish, but if it was refinished, it was re-oiled and worked on. It was never sanded or anything because you can tell by the staining and the surface. But it may have had fresh coat of varnish or lacquer or something put on, or boiled linseed oil and turpentine and a little bit of vinegar. That was sort of the standard, one of the standard finishes back then. It's an English formula, and this is a beautiful table. It's got its original pad feet under the Queen Anne feet, full height. Often those are all chipped off down around the base at this point, but it's a great example. There's another look at it and so forth, and it's fairly small. This is a very small table. It only measures about 35 inches in width. So you could use this table if you had this in your house. If you have a small kitchen or a small eating area somewhere, and you've been looking for the perfect table, this would be it. It's got a great atmosphere to it. It's made of maple. You will not see a lot of mahogany furniture in this collection because mahogany was for very wealthy people, and at the time this was made, they really weren't bringing much mahogany into the United States. Out of Cuba or Santo Domingo. And most of the local cabinet makers relied on local wood sources, birch, maple, pine. They didn't do a lot with oak at this time. They preferred woods that had a more beautiful color than oak typically does. Oak has some color in it, but it doesn't have the beauty of a really fine maple or a really fine birch veneer or something with all the graining in it. And they seeked those out, and they would make their own veneers. There was quite a skill they had. This is estimated at $2,000 to $3,000 and an opening bid of $1,000, but it's a very, very fine example. And if that one wasn't enough, you got this one. This is another Queen Anne. This is tiger maple drop leaf table, and this appears to have its original untouched. I don't think I'd be surprised if this had ever been refinished in 200 or 300 years. The surface on it is pretty great. There's nice legitimate wear in the top. I put this in we did a video over on Patreon the other day. This was the table that I talked about the sale, and I gave them a preview for it. But I decided everybody should know about this auction. It's a very interesting sale. And again, you got the full pad feet under the Queen Anne paws, Queen Anne feet, and nice surface, and just a beautiful proportional example also. It's proportionally very, very attractive. It's 28 inches high. It's a regular, sort of dining table height, and it's 44 inches wide open. So it's about 3.5, almost 4 feet wide, fully extended. And again, this is a good table. These are tables you can use. You don't have to, you don't have to put them under a glass dome. You put them in your house. You put them in a nice spot. You put a light on it, and you enjoy it. And she bought this from. This is interesting. This came from the collection of Myrna Anderson, another well-known collector. Back in 1998, she bought it there because, or maybe Bill Samaha bought it there, and then he got it from. She got it from Bill. But this is a really, really fine example of Queen Anne furniture, and it's sort of strange to me that she worked at Skinner's and that they're not handling the sale for some reason. That's rather odd because she was with Skinner's for a long time as a consultant and working at the firm. So I don't know what happened there. Something happened. All right. And then over to this. This is a great painting. This is by Charles Henry Gifford. And he was a luminous school painter like Fitzhenry Lane was up here in Gloucester. He was born down in, I think he was born in New Bedford, down in the South Shore of Massachusetts, sort of heading towards Rhode Island. It was a coastal community. And he was a well-known marine painter. This was his thing. He painted coastal scenes. And when I first saw this picture, there was an area where I live, right down the street, with a very similar cove. No buildings in the background, but a similar sort of building on the edge and a very similar shoreline. And for just a second, I wondered if that was the cove near my house. But it isn't, because there are no buildings like that back where we are. But there are in the skyline of New Bedford and down that part of the state, which was also a big fishing port. And it was a really lovely, lovely painting. And Gifford was very famous. He was very well known. He was in the nominated to all kinds of awards. He was heavily exhibited. His paintings are in the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. They're in the Peabody Essex Museum. They're in the Yale Library. He's got a very extensive resume. The painting is estimated at $12,000 to $18,000. Has a $6,000 opening bid, but it's a great piece of marine art. It's extremely attractive. It's the canvas size is 12 by 16. It's 14 by 18 overall, and it's apparently it looks to be in very, very good condition. I looked at the back of it. They did include a picture of the back, and the back looks good. I don't see any indications of, I don't see a relining in here because I don't see any extra canvas. So it may be on the original canvas. And he was born in 1839 and he died in 1904. He actually fought in the Civil War on top of it. His father was a boat builder. It was sort of a very interesting family. And so he knew a lot about boats, and which is probably why he painted them so often. But this is a really nice, very romantic painting. I love it. It's great. And then there is some Chinese export porcelain in the sale. Not a lot of it. There's some Canton ware, there's some Fitzhugh, decent pieces. And but this was something that she got. I believe she got this from Eleanor. She bought this from Eleanor Gordon, and because it's a New England, it's an export terrine with armorial markings on it, and it was made for a New England family who lived in Vermont. And here you have the crest. It's a very fine one. It's got the berry finial with gilding on it. Those nice strap handles on the ends. Still got its original under tray, and it's Nanking because it's got the very, very fine spear borders on it and so forth. And the armorial crest is still in very, very good shape. And I believe this is the arms of the Marsh family, from what I remember reading about. Yeah, the Marsh family of Vermont. They were farmers and businessmen. I believe they owned a bank up there. So, at any rate, this was estimated at $2,500 to $3,500 with a $1,200 opening bid. But it's a historic piece, and they know who it was made for, and it was made for an American. And this was very early in the China trade. You have to always remember that the China trade didn't really start bringing in porcelain in any quantities at all until into almost 1800. So this was a very early shipment of China trade wares for an American family. All right, and they may have gotten it when they were in England for some reason and moved here, but I don't think so. I think the timing is wrong. I suspect they ordered it and they had their family crest put on it because they still use family crests, even though it was it was a free country from the British. Families still used their heraldic shields on things. And I suspect they were in a position financially to order something very early in the China trade. So you don't see a lot of early pieces like this. This would have been made within the first 10 years of the opening of trade with China, with America, after the first ship went over. So it makes it very interesting from that standpoint. It shows you that there was even in upstate, even in Vermont, there was an interest in very refined things. And then there's this. This is another New Hampshire table. Wonderful, wonderful birch veneered inlaid card table. Very interesting proportions on it, and it almost has like a modern look to it with these diamond patterns. Because the cabinet makers in rural areas were always trying to think of clever things that they could do, that they could make working with what they had. And they often followed the trends of the big cities, what was designs and shapes and forms and styles, the latest fashion, they used to call it, what was interesting and what was of the sort of the rage in Boston, or what was going on in Salem, which had a very big influence on the American furniture market. As many of you know, Salem was considered to be a major American city at the time. And here you have this very interestingly done table with these very delicate legs going down, very finely done all the way to the bottom. Absolutely a great little table. And there it is, open. It's got a nice handy drawer in it. Again, it's a game table or card table. You could use it as a breakfast table. It's estimated at $3,000 to $5,000 with a $1,500 opening bid. And what else did they have to say? Much else? Probably not. That was sort of it. They don't know who owned it, obviously, but this would have been a table for somebody that had some success. This wouldn't have been a working person's table. This would have been for sort of an upper middle class family that wanted to own some nice furniture, to go in the parlor, as they say. A very, very attractive piece. And again, sort of that quintessential New England material culture. And then you have this really nice, but it's a very small one, a small Chippendale looking glass. Sometimes they call these courting mirrors or something like that. This one is only 19 inches tall and 15 inches wide. It's a country mirror. That's why it was painted black. because it's probably done on a fairly inexpensive wood. Do they mention the wood? It's always interesting to see if they mention it. No, they didn't. Could be on pine. It could have been on some sort of maple that didn't have the right finish on it. So it was done, and then they painted it black. That was because they didn't have a lot of choice in paints either back then. Paint choices were fairly limited because of mixing pigments and the costs. And black paint you often find on early American things, especially small objects like mirrors and boxes. You see lots of black toll ware, and sometimes they would have a little color, and they could put a band of flowers around it or something. But black was a common ground color. But it has a wonderful shape. I love the form of it. It's very Chippendale-y, but it's also with all these sort of swan's neck devices going around it, a place where they are. It's like the maker went a little wild with those, putting it on there. So it definitely falls into the area of folk art. It's estimated at $1,000 to $1,500 with a $500 starting bid. And then over to this. This is the okay. I shouldn't have said there's no mahogany. This is the only mahogany piece I think of the sale, or I'm pretty sure but it's a very rare thing. It's a federal mahogany inlaid table, and it's been attributed to the workshops of John and Thomas Seymour, who were, as many of you know, they were sort of the top of the pile as far as American furniture for very wealthy people in New England. They were the makers. Seymour Furniture's in every museum that has if they have American furniture in a museum in America, they have Seymour Furniture. They have at least one piece of it. They were fairly prolific, but they did top of the line work. And this is a really, really beautiful table. Fantastic flame birch veneer panels on the front. It's got a little shape here, very nicely turned. And they were known for doing these beautifully tapered legs with reeding right down to the floor in this vase form, last bit of the foot down here below that little knuckle there. And this is a beautiful, and notice there's great inlay along the edge of the table. They were masters at inlay, and they were masters at selecting very beautiful woods and then putting beautiful finishes on them. This is a heck of a fine table, and there's the back of it. There's the underside of it, and I'm just looking out of curiosity. I noticed there's just one glue block missing on here because there's a glue block in this corner that you could see in the lower right. And they're held on with hide glue. So after a while, it's not uncommon for them the wood hide glue to dry out and they fall off. Sometimes they stay in place though. But often they do fall. That's why you have that white shadow there. There was a block there, and she never replaced it. She said it's gone. It's gone. She'd probably would have had it fixed if it was going to make without it the table would fall over or something. But she opted not to. All right. And the glue blocks often come undone on furniture. It's not uncommon. As a matter of fact, one time we had a piece of furniture that we were getting from a house for an auction. It was a nice early piece. It was a Chippendale chest secretary, and it had been in this very early house. And we asked the man. I said, "How long has the chest been standing there?" And he said, "It's been there." Maybe since the house was built. They couldn't tell me how long it had been there. He had grown up in the house. It had been passed down. He was the fourth generation to live there. And I said, really? And he goes, yeah. And when we went to get the piece out of there, they took the upper section off, and then they lifted the lower section off. And as they were walking away with it, I looked down, and the 4 feet were still attached to the floor. They never, the glue blocks had long dried out. That's what that means, because they were absolutely just sitting there. They didn't tip over. They were just sitting on the floor. Front ball and cloud, and the rear legs were still on the floor, and the chest is going down the stairs because it had stood there so long, but nobody noticed because it was not literally moved for probably over 100 years, 120 years. This is sort of a funny American furniture story. House was in Salem, Mass. Very interesting. All right, and then you have this, a really fine Queen Anne. This is a Southern New Hampshire chest, tiger maple. Beautiful example, really strong tigering, figuring in the woods all the way around, and very nice graduation of drawers, and these beautiful, nice compressed Queen Anne feet with just a simple drop pendant in the middle. Sometimes you see these in the fancy city chests. They'll all be carved out and worked. And in New Hampshire, they maybe did a little more simply. Nice looking brasses. You can check and see if the brass is original. These typically had small brasses. Brasses were very expensive. And small brasses were popular in rural areas because they didn't cost as much. They were a little smaller. And so you have these sort of small batwing, they call them batwing brasses. And here are the poles on the side that support the lid when you fold it down. And then when you open it up to the interior, this is it. That's an old interior. Notice the difference in color. This has been oiled in a very, very long time. Nice, early, dry, rustic surface. And you have the column pullouts here. Those are little boxes that fit in, and you can hide papers in them and so forth. It's a very, very fine piece of furniture. Estimated at $5,000 to $8,000 with a $2,500 starting price. What does you have for history on this? This was bought. Let's see, purchased at the New Hampshire Antique Dealers Association auction in Manchester, New Hampshire. That's where it came from. If you're not familiar with it, the New Hampshire Antiques Dealers Association has for years done an amazing show up in the Manchester area where the best American furniture dealers and decorative art and folk art dealers and all kinds of dealers go up there, but it's very high end. It's sort of like the East Side Show, only in the summertime. The famous East Side Show they do in New York, they used to do the Manchester show, and dealers would show up with their best things for that show. And Martha would always go to it. Everybody went to it. We went to it. It was fun. It was fun. And you got to see friends and see what they've discovered during the year, because the dealers would find things and save them for their big shows. The Ellis show in Boston, the East Side Settlement House show, the Philadelphia show, and the Manchester show in New Hampshire. And $2,500 starting price. And then this is a very fine, okay, this is the second mahogany thing. I forgot about this. This is a really good, there's 2 mahogany pieces of furniture, I guess, on the sale out of 300 lots. But this is a mahogany, federal mahogany and flame birch veneer sofa. But it's a North Shore sofa. It's probably from Salem, judging by the design of it. Extremely fine, very elegant. This is a very formal piece of furniture. But the quality of the woodwork on it is exceptional. It is exceptional, and she had it reupholstered, obviously, but the upholstery looks very good on it. Very, very good fabric, and but beautiful condition. The condition of this thing is almost looks brand new. But it's got a very, very lovely finish on it. Beautiful color, beautiful inlay, and perfectly proportioned, and a real high end. Because Salem is one of the big cities in America that, when the federal period came about, the city embraced federal furniture, federal design, federal architecture with both hands. And because it was after the Revolution, and all the China trade happens there, and the Derbys and all these famous families that lived there that built the city with trade, had houses on Chestnut Street and Federal Street in Salem, and these giant federal mansions, and they would fill them with these pieces of furniture. But this is a very, very fine one. And they said it could have possibly been made in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, because Portsmouth, New Hampshire at the time was a very prosperous city. It was a major port for shipping. They shipped a lot of pine to England out of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, curiously. But it was also a very busy, successful place. And that's where the Dunlops and all those cabinet makers made such a name for themselves. And then over to this. This is a very interesting painting. And apparently this was one of Martha's favorite paintings. And she did some research on it, and she believed that it was painted by a young girl, by a child. It's an American folk art painting. It's on paper, measures 10 by 14 inches. And evidently she owned this for a long, 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 long time. And it's a farm, obviously. Probably, again, the southern New Hampshire or North Shore of Massachusetts, along a river or pond. And you have this lovely little red-roofed or brown-roofed shingled house. But it's a fancy house. That's a pretty fancy house. Big windows, nice white painted fence around it. And then you have all the pine trees and different things around the yard. And this would be the view of a child. But the colors are great. The kid, whoever the child was that painted this, had a real eye for color, because the shades of greens going from dark to much, much lighter, and the sort of luminous sky in the background and so forth. Very interesting. Probably painted around 1830 to 1850, I would guess. I don't think they put a date on it, but this was apparently, according to the notes on this, this was something that Martha had owned for quite a while and absolutely loved. It doesn't say where she got it or anything else, just brilliantly colored primitive landscape with a large single-figure homestead and distant mountain. The distant mountains make me think it's probably somewhere in southern New Hampshire, but because you don't have a lot of mountains in Massachusetts. There's a note. There it is. Martha owned and loved this for a long time, attracted by its colors, its fantasy, world-like nature, because it's the view of a child. It's how a kid looked at their world back then. And I think the estimate is for free, $1,000 to $1,500. I think that's a terrific painting. It's the kind of painting you never get sick of. And again, a view of how a young girl or young kid viewed America. Girls often painted back then, and this is an awfully nice example. Really, really is. And then over to this, another miniature. This is a miniature. This painting is very small. And miniature American folk art miniature paintings, primitive paintings, are exceedingly rare. And this is only the painting itself is 2 3/4 inches by 4.5 inches. It's very, very small. The overall size, including the frame, is only 4.5 by 6, just so you know. And it's got this homemade black painted country, probably pine, I'm gonna bet, frame with this picture in it. And this might have also been done by a child, the way it's drawn, the proportions, and so forth. But again, a very nice home, a beautiful house. It was done in the 19th century, but it looks to be a late 18th century house, and very lush, pine trees and things and so forth, with a little brook running by it and so forth. And again, mountains in the background. So probably southern New Hampshire, Portsmouth, somewhere around there. But a rare thing, a small thing. And the estimate is very reasonable, $250 opening bid, and they're estimating it's probably worth $500 to $1,000. And you could, of course, it's a little crooked in the frame. It slipped in the frame a little bit, easy enough to fix, but there's a good shot of it. It's a charming painting, charming American folk art painting. And then this is a famous painting she owned. This is a painting by Joseph Stewart, portrait of Samuel Tracy, 1790. And this painting had been at the Vos Gallery in Boston, which is one of the great American galleries. It came from the collection originally of Stephen and Nina Little. And if you've been collecting American furniture, or you've been in the antique world for any time, there was a famous book written called Little by Little. And they lived in where we had our shop. They lived in Essex, Mass. And they had this house that they ended up donating, and it had some of the fine. It was probably the biggest collection of American folk art that was bought back in the 1920s and 30s and 40s of any collection in America. I don't think there was another collection like the Nina Little collection. And they lived out on this road right behind where our gallery was, where our shop was. And they used to hold, Society for the Preservation of New England Antiquity meetings there on their property. It was a beautiful property at the end of this road near the ocean. And the house was just filled with amazing stuff. And she died back in the... Nina died in the early 90s. I'd been to the house, and my business partner and I were called out there when she died because they knew us. And the caretaker called us and wanted some advice on handling things now that the Littles were gone. Securing the house, there were some things that they needed to put away for safekeeping that we stored for them that were extremely rare, and all kinds of things. Many of the pieces are in museums today, and so forth. But the book, Little by Little, was amazing, and this was one of their pieces. And this was actually sold at the Bertram and Nina Fletcher Little Collection auction. It was finally held in October 1994. And then it went to it was bought at that sale by the Cantors, who were big New York collectors, and Richard Cantor, and it was resold in 2002, and Martha Hamilton bought it at that time. And it's been exhibited, all kinds of things, but this is a really amazing painting. It's 19 by 17 inches, the site size of the picture, but absolutely, it's one of these icons of American folk art. The facial expression, the details, the hair, the buildings, the sort of egg yolk yellow building in the background and so forth. And this Nina Little's house was just full of stuff like this. It was a wonder. We got to spend some time in there, and it was absolutely fascinating. And they also had carousel horses and all kinds of things. They had all kinds of crazy American folk art. She and her husband had a fair bit of wherewithal. I guess somebody in the family pulled all their money out of. I think the story was they somebody in the family pulled all their money out of the stock market in 1928, right before the crash. And during the Depression, it was just the two of them. I don't believe they had children, and they just went out and bought antiques and toured around. There were no jobs, and they used to help out the community because they had some wherewithal. But they just collected quietly antiques, and these antiques back then weren't worth anything. A painting like this, if she bought this in 1930, she probably paid $10 for it, if that. The American folk art was not recognized very much back then, and the stuff was basically for free around the countryside. And of course, that changed a great deal as things went on. But it was an interesting collection. And then this is another one of my favorite paintings in the sale, and I like it because it's so representative of things. It's American School interior meeting scene, and here they are. And this is, not that long after the revolution. Maybe this is the next generation, I suppose, judging by the style of furniture, the dining table they're sitting at. It looks like a Sheraton or Federal style dining table. So maybe 1810 to 1820, somewhere in there. They're beautifully dressed. There's a manservant coming in, bringing in a candle, and they're having, there's fresh fruit on the table, which was a real luxury. You see in the middle of the table. Looks like peaches or something, and they have cut glass. And these are the guys that after the American Revolution, that was these men that with their brains and hard work and leveraging farmland and doing things that built the economy that grew into the Industrial Revolution. These guys were the beginning of it. These are the guys who were the beginning that started all of that in motion, that built up the country, built up the economy, grew the nation, made it very powerful, and in fact, many of the people that from this generation are still around today, the descendants, and they're still doing business and still doing the things they were doing then. But these are the people that built America. These are the people that built it, that were involved with its governance, that worked trade deals and did all that stuff. And they often get looked at and say, well, who are these guys in these fancy suits? They're important. They're important because they're representative of where American history comes from. And you can tell in the background there's a very nice Federal period mirror, Federal dining table, Federal chairs. These guys were that generation of patriots that, or the children of those patriots that ended the British rule over the United States and created an independent country. It's very important. It's very important. And lovely frame, beautiful picture. 25 by 30 inches is the image size, and it's estimated at just $3,000 to $5,000. They don't know who the artist is. There's no mention of who the artist is. But it was bought from the Vos Gallery in Boston. And Vos is one of the best art galleries in the United States. It was. I think they're sort of shut down now. I think they're all retired and gone. But and they were a very generous gallery. They did a lot with museums and shared information and came up with some major discoveries throughout their history, and I'm not at all surprised that the little spot paint that Martha bought pictures from them. A lot of people with great art collections bought from the Vos Gallery for many years. They were the gallery in Boston for decades upon decades. So at any rate, it's a really interesting sale. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. There's hundreds of lots in there. Check it out. It's worth checking out. But think about it in the context of American history, the formation of the country, what life was like, and look at it with a judgment of how it would have looked to you at that time, given what they knew then and what their experiences has been that brought them to that point. And then into the formation, that transitional period from the 1730s, 1740s, 50s, then the revolution, and then post-revolution, and then rebuilding the country and creating its independence and building its wealth to the point where it could be a sustainable enterprise, and including the War of 1812 and everything else. It's a really interesting period in human history, and it's amazing that this stuff was gathered up. And Martha did a great job doing it. And there are other things in there too: silhouettes, firkins, wooden bowls, mixing bowls, all kinds of interesting day-to-day items that you would be commonly found in an early American home. They've survived. which is sort of a miracle when you think about how much we throw away today. So, at any rate, there we go. All right. Thank you for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with the regular Asia video and talk about some auction results that happened this week. Some interesting results. There were a couple of absolute bargains. I hope you guys left bids. And I'll go through some of the bargains that took place this week. Always leave a bid. Always leave a bid. All right. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you haven't, and see you next time. See you tomorrow. All right. Bye-bye.